you will type less code to type if you use typeless containers, because everything is a box. Okay, so remember when I said last time that I primarily use these two things, var and div? Now, just as an aside, like I'm trying to make this as language agnostic as possible, but there's not a lot of languages that do this, that have the capability of doing this. But this is what I'm really drawn to, is that in UI, right, we just have like squares, right, containers, and in data, we just have a var, which is also a container. So again, we have a data container and a UI container, and they're both typeless. Now, this is different from object-oriented programming languages like Java, C#, C++, and so forth, where they see every element as its own type. So for example, I might have a class that defines dog, I might have a class that defines rabbit, a class that defines giraffe. I mean, they all might inherit from animal, but you're going to give them a different class for every element. And that's why frameworks such as React, Angular, and so forth are so bloated, because they treat every little element that you have on your page, be it data or UI, they treat them as differently. Okay, that's why these frameworks take hundreds of megabytes, because each one is also defined in a different file. It's just it's so heavy and so overly complicated. So as mentioned, another thing that they do, you'll have, like, let's say a class of dog, of rabbit, of giraffe, and they usually will inherit from a base class like animal. So not only are these things in different like classes and different types, they also add biological properties to these bits of data. So you'll see terms such as polymorphism and inheritance, and basically they try to treat data like living creatures, and it's just very weird. I say, instead of doing all that, just let data be data. Okay, data is just properties. That's it. It's just properties on objects. But don't make it more complicated than that. And in JavaScript, the way it works is that it doesn't see any of these things as different. It just sees them all as objects. All we care about is just the container of them. Okay, that's what I mean when I say everything is a box. And by the way, before I go on, object, when I say object, it's different from object-oriented programming. Okay, object-oriented programming is types, and objects in JavaScript are typeless. Okay, even though they share the word object, these are two different things. In JavaScript, it's all typeless, and in object-oriented programming, it's mainly types, different classes for each thing. And so JavaScript, when it comes to the objects themselves, the only thing that we're concerned about is the object's properties. So here are some properties for those, those animals that we had before. I'll just give them like two properties. I'll give them the description of what kind of thing it is and their age. So a rabbit, a dog, and so forth. So in JavaScript, everything is an object, like in the world, right? If you see the world like it is, everything is not a type. It's just an object with properties on it. So for example, a person would be an object that, maybe you'll have like a few properties like name or age. And maybe if you look at your table, then some of the properties might be like what kind of material it uses, what the prices say on the table, and so on and so forth. But everything is just basically objects with properties on them. See this diagram here? This is called JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. This is the main way, or the way, that data is presented in JavaScript. And I'm going to show you what this means. But basically, you can think about data as just boxes. Okay? The first and most basic box can hold primitives, which basically means it can hold values. So either numbers, strings, null, or Boolean values like true, false. So when I declare a variable, okay, just think about it like I inserted this number into this box. So I just put 1, 2, 3 inside a box that we named box 1. You could name this anything. But this is the most basic type of box. So the other two boxes that we have are objects and arrays. And they are special in the fact that they can hold sub boxes, which is different from the primitive which can only hold values. Okay? Forget about the array for now. Let's just talk about a primitive and an object for a second. Think about it like as a file and a directory. So a directory can hold, multiple files, but a directory can also hold subdirectories, right? So an object can hold primitives, but it can also hold sub-objects. Okay, it can also hold subarrays. And an array is the exact same thing as an object, except that it's ordered. So when we want to access one of these boxes within it, we access it by an index. Whereas here, we access the elements by their name. And that's why this is also called a hash map, because you give it a key and it will give you back the value. So you give it the name of the box that you want to access and it'll give you the contents of that box back. Now this format, JSON, became so popular that it became the main way that clients and servers communicate. It also, essentially every company, every website, every app, well, not every app, but JSON has become probably the most popular way to represent data. And the great thing about it is that it's typeless. See, we only use this one keyword to define a box. But this format became so popular that other languages, like all the other languages, just started using JSON. So Java, C#, Python, they all have the ability to use JSON because it's such a popular data format. Okay, I just wanted to show you a more complex example. These are the only three types of items that we have. Again, a primitive, an object, and an array. And we're going to have different color for each one. And see here how I define this variable? This is equivalent to this diagram here. Now think, how like I showed you, like these are in 3D, these boxes. Now let's take like a 2D view of them. Like let's say, for example, we started off with an array, right? Because students is an array. See how it starts off with these brackets? So you can almost think about this array, see this main box, that we're almost taking like an X-ray view of it, like a luggage in an airport. And what you'll see here is this array, right? This box has two boxes within it, which are ordered, which are two objects. And then each object has 6 elements. Okay. So see, this is the first object, the first student is called Tom. And Tom, see this object? It has 6 properties within it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just like here, right? Now 4 of these items are primitive, so we put 4 green boxes here. One of the boxes was an array, so it's this one, see? And how the array also has 2 primitives within it, so we put 2 ordered boxes within it. And this student Tom also had an object of grades. So this is grades and it has math and chemistry within it. So it's just, this is just like hierarchies, right? Just like directories. So yeah, just think about these as just like a hierarchy. And we can go down endless levels really. But these are the only 3 items you're ever going to have in JSON. It's very simple. Now, these are just 2 examples of how I can access these values. So let's say I wanted to access the the second value of this array items. Okay, so first I'd go to the first student, right? I'd go, because this is an array and it's ordered, we access the first element with its index. So index 0 will give me this first element, which happens to be an object, by the way. So in order to access an object's properties or elements, we just use the name of what we want, which is different from arrays, because with arrays, we use just the index because it's ordered. But with items, so let's backtrack again. I had the first student, right? So now this is an object, and the way I access items, I just type in, dot items to access this element. And then within items, because it's an array, I just access the second index, will give me paper. So this thing right here will return paper. This thing right here will return grade of 4. Say I'll go to the second student now. Again, this is 0 based, so first and second. So the second student will go to its grades, and because this is an object, okay, not an array, this is an object, we'll just access its property like this. See, just dot physics will give me this value of 4. See how when I access grades, it's different from the way I access items, because items is an array and grades is an object, a sub-object. So yeah, just to summarize, everything is a box, okay? Sometimes we have boxes within boxes, but everything is a box, especially when it comes to data. And that's what we looked at today, was the data portion of programming. So we just represented data with these typeless containers. And we're going to do the same thing with UI in my next video with typeless containers. Okay, but it's always just about containers, because everything is just a box.